If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
To quote The Rock, the hierarchy of power in New York City basketball has shifted. This is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast and Audacy WFAN original. I'm EJ Stewart, co-hosted with my guy Tommy Beer. We got a lot to talk about on this episode. A Knicks masterclass, an absolute thumping of the Brooklyn Nets at Madison Square Garden on Wednesday. We'll talk all about that win and what it means for this Knicks team moving forward. We'll also preview this really big game they'll have on Friday in South Beach facing the Miami Heat. And what do we think about that new MSG Plus streaming service that the Garden announced yesterday? We'll have all that on this episode. Tommy, how you feeling today?
Feeling pretty good, EJ. Something's going on here, bro. There is something brewing in New York City, and fans are excited, rightfully so. The Knicks have stumbled onto something. It's actually the 3-year anniversary of Leon Rose's hire. I believe today or yesterday or tomorrow. And the Knicks are in a very, very interesting position. It's no longer the scrappy underdog. Knicks have their sights set on a 4 seed. And they're looking to not just beat teams, they're looking to embarrass teams as they've done of late. We got a lot to talk about, EJ, but it seems like there's something going on here, and we got a front row seat for it.
Yeah, and thank goodness we got to do this podcast this season because it sounds like this is going to be maybe a season that we could think about for a long time moving forward. So especially what we've had the last decade or decade plus of Knicks basketball, this has been really awesome to watch during this winning streak. So the Knicks took care of well, before I begin all that, let's take a step back. Of course, it's Orange and Blue Bloods and New York Knicks podcast. You can get these episodes whenever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature so you can get the episode whenever we drop. Also, check us out on YouTube, where you can get our video podcast as well. So the video portion of this podcast, whether it be the full episodes or the segments, all get posted on the Audacy Sports channel on YouTube. So make sure you check us out there. But I jumped the gun because I'm so excited to talk about this win. So let's get right to it. The Knicks took care of business Wednesday night, hammering the Nets 142-118 at Madison Square Garden. It was an offensive explosion as New York posted 81 first half points. Jalen Brunson, who had 30 at the half, finished the game with 39 points. It was also a breakout game for Quentin Grimes. He had 22 points in the win. He made 6 threes. As a team, the Knicks were 20 for 35 from downtown. They shot 60% from the floor. It was just a just dominant performance from the Knicks offensively. There was not much takeaway positively for the Nets in this game, but Cam Johnson, they just acquired in that trade for Kevin Durant. He did have a good game. He had 33 points in this one. He had 7 threes, but it was not enough as the Knicks rout the Brooklyn Nets. So let's start with this. Like, Tommy, how did and why did the Knicks dominate the Nets so easily in this one?
I'm going to start, well, obviously, we'll start with Jalen Brunson. 30 points on 12 of 14 shooting in the first half. Knicks scored 81. I don't know if it was the best single half the Knicks have played this century, this millennium, but it's certainly up there on a very short list. They just could not miss. Shot 70% from downtown for the game, above 50%. To put it this way, the Knicks had a higher percentage on 3-point attempts than Obi Toppin had on dunk attempts last night. So that just gives you a little idea of how hot the Knicks were from beyond the arc. But and we'll get into all the specifics. I think just starting out like big picture stuff, I thought the start of the second half was interesting in the fact that it was an uneven second half, an uneven third quarter, as we expected. When you get a big lead like that, game's going to get sloppy and choppy and all that stuff. But I thought it was interesting on the first defensive possession of the first half of the second half. I noted Julius Randle fought through two screens, bodied through them, got to his man, challenged defensively, close out on shooters. The other thing Randle did, and he's going to get kind of lost in the he only had 21, 8, and 8 last night.
Yeah, pedestrian by his standards.
But just when one kind of stretch of, I think it was 3 or 4 possessions in a row in the first half, the start of the second quarter, found Quentin Grimes for a wide open 3, found Mitch Robinson for a dunk, came down again, found Grimes for another 3-pointer. we kind of expect Jalen Brunson to play shockingly. He's not going to score 39 every night, but dating back to January 1st, we got, that's 2 full months of data here. Jalen Brunson's averaging 28.6 points while shooting over 51% from the floor, over 46% from three. He's just playing at a ridiculously high level. Even if that comes back down to earth and he's at his seasoned average of around 24, 25 a night efficiently, the Knicks can kind of unlock their potential when Randall does the little things, play hard defensively, fight through screens, and spray the ball to open three-point shooters. And obviously, the other part of that equation is Quentin Grimes catching, shooting, and knocking down those shots.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did last night. We are, Grimes believers here. I don't think we've ever lost faith in him. I think we all assumed it's only a matter of time before he snapped out of a little mini slump that he's been in. And he did so last night. We saw kind of, when he's playing well, and not only can he knock down threes, he attacks the basket. We know what he gives the team defensively. There's just a lot to like there. So we got the Brunson kind of, obviously he's the lead story, but then we have the complementary pieces, the Randall and Brunson as the cornerstones. We know what Josh Hart does, 7-0, only 4, 4, and 5, 4 points, 4 boards, 5 assists last night. He was plus 30 in 25 minutes. Josh Hart. And that's a quintessential Josh Hart line. 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 floor burns, jumping into the front row on a team up 25 points. And again, that second half, he jumped into the first row, Knicks up 25 points. Jalen Brunson taking charges with the Knicks up 30 points. It's it's those little things, Randall, joking with Brunson post-game press conferences, and they're smiling and they're happy on the floor and they're goofing around with each other. It's those little things that build into the bigger thing. And when you sum all that together, talent, chemistry, Thibs making the right decisions, playing the younger guys, all these things factor into a mix. You get a team that, for 41 games now, dating back to they shortened the rotation to December 4th. That's 41 games. That's exactly half a season. Knicks are 27-14. Only 2 teams in the NBA have a better, have more wins. Only 1 team in the NBA has a better net rating. The Knicks are real. They are here. They should be taken seriously. And it's going to be fun to see how this plays out over the final 15-plus games of the regular season.
Ooh, it's going to be good, Tommy. It's going to be good. Look, that game on Wednesday night, first of all, the shooting was unreal. I mean, the Knicks shooting the ball that well, especially in that first quarter, putting up 47 points. I mean, that was the best quarter of basketball the Knicks have probably played maybe in 20 years. I mean, that's how dominant they were offensively. And a lot of it was they were getting good looks. They weren't hesitating on those shots. And once one guy saw one go down, then everybody else started getting into the fray. You mentioned Quentin Grimes. I like that he was aggressive. I like that he was not hesitating on whether or not to shoot or whether or not to pass or whether or not, because sometimes I think on this team, because he has so many other offensive players who can get their own, sometimes I think he hesitates on whether or not he should, kind of get in the action. He kind of gets locked into just being that defensive guy. The Knicks are going to need him to be a factor offensively as well. And we know he's capable. And last night was a great example of that. Again, 8 for 12 from the field, 22 points in this game. And his jump shot looked just pure in this one. You mentioned Josh Hart. I mean, how about Josh Hart ripping the ball out of Daron Sharp's hands in the second half on a rebound like he was Zion Williamson on Kevin Knox? I mean, it was crazy watching how Hart, even when he's not scoring, can impact the game in so many different ways. And you mentioned Jalen Brunson. 39 points on 18 shot attempts is ridiculous. I mean, that's just like, that efficiency is crazy. He was 5 for 6 from the 3-point line. And he made both. The only thing he made all his free throws this time, though. The Knicks continue to have struggles with the free throws. That was the only thing offensively the Knicks continue to struggle with. But I mean, Brunson, that was as close to pitching a perfect game as you can have playing an NBA basketball game. Had scored 39 points in 36 minutes on 15 for 18 and 5 for 6 from 3. I mean, what is that? In baseball, that's like pitching a complete game shutout where you throw.
EJ, I didn't check Twitter. I didn't check Twitter last night. Did Spencer Dinwiddie tweet a lot of stuff last night? Was he saying much on social media? Because he's been talkative with KD and Kyrie on his side. Did he say anything about Brunson's performance last night? I didn't see that.
Yeah, Spencer Dinwiddie seemed very quiet last night. It was funny because even after the last game, I guess he didn't realize what had happened and what had changed when it came to the hierarchy of power in New York basketball. Because after the last game when the Knicks spanked these guys, I guess he's still thinking that KD and Kyrie are coming through that door, to quote Rick Pitino, because he's like, oh, next game, we're looking forward to seeing those guys again. And then Spencer Dinwiddie in this game posted minus 18 in this one. He shot 3 for 10 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3. And his man, the guy that his contemporary at the point guard position, pitched the shutout, essentially. 39 points, 15 for 18 from the field. So not much from Spencer Dinwiddie. I don't think we'll be hearing much from him in this rivalry moving forward. So it was just an absolute dominant performance by the New York Knicks. And I really do want to harping on this Quentin Grimes case, because to me, I know we've talked about X factors on this team. I like that Knicks team is like that when Quentin Grimes plays like that. Like, I think when you say, what is the max offensive potential of this team? If they get Quentin Grimes shooting the ball like that, they can put up 120, 130, 140 points on some teams, because you know you're going to get quality play from Randall. You're going to get quality play from Brunson. You know IQ is going to bring it. RJ is a little bit of a mixed bag. He played very well last night offensively. And Mitch Robinson, I mean, he was dominant in this game as well. So you know you're going to get your offense from certain guys. If you get that kind of offensive output from Quentin Grimes, that's when you say, okay, now the Knicks go from being a good offensive team to potentially a great offensive team.
100%. I'm just looking it up right now. Quentin Grimes has scored over 14 points 12 times this year, 13 times this year. They are 11-2 in those games. So that just kind of lends credence to the fact that when he gets going, it's a very good sign for the team, because again, you kind of know what you got from you know what you're going to get from Brunson, you know what you're going to get from Randall last night, and I wrote a little bit about this morning, just kind of looking at the bigger picture and the grand scheme of things, because you know expectations have to be adjusted now. Like this team, 7-game win streak, average margin of victory during these 7 games is 16 points. Again, they are not just winning games; they are dominating teams, and they've been a good team for a long time. They are a great team during this current stretch. Now, history tells us, and common NBA thinking, you know, lets us know an NBA team can only go so far if they don't have a top tier elite NBA superstar, which the Knicks don't have. However, what's going to be fun and really interesting going forward is, what about if a team has 2 all-NBA caliber talents? Because forget about Brunson being an all-star now, which is even more not being an all-star, which is even more laughable than it was a month ago.
Yeah.
Both Brunson and Randall, I don't know if they're going to make all NBA. We'll have that conversation a month from now. But they're in the conversation, certainly. Make no mistake about it. When you factor in the Knicks record, their production, their efficiency, all that stuff, they're all NBA caliber players. If they're not one of the 15 best players in the NBA this season, they're in that top 20, top 25 discussion. So the question is, what's the ceiling of a team that has 2 all-NBA caliber talents surrounded by 7 players who all excel in their roles? When you have Mitchell Robinson, 3 games in a row, he's yet to miss a shot. In fact, I looked it up this morning on Basketball Reference. He is the first player in NBA history to have 3 straight double-doubles and shoot 100% from the floor in each of those 3 contests. First and only player in NBA history. We talked about Grimes knocking down 3-pointers. We talked about Josh Hart and the bench. That second unit, since Josh Hart has arrived during the 7-game win streak, the best net rating, unsurprisingly, in the NBA in terms of their reserves. IQ, 15 points on 50% shooting. I mean, listen, if it's a day of the week that ends in Y, then IQ is going to give you 15 to 20 points. He's going to he's going to shoot around, shoot a high percentage. He's going to give you plenty on the defensive end, play passing lanes. Hartenstein, 8-8. 3 assists and a couple blocks last night. You love what he's given you as part of that second unit. The only 2 kind of, the guys that really haven't exploded of late are Obi Toppin and RJ Barrett. If and when these guys start, succeeding in their roles, becoming superstars in their roles. Again, that's not RJ scoring 23 points a night. That's RJ scoring, maybe 16 points on 55% shooting from the floor, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and solid defense. And Obi coming in, getting a few easy baskets, knocking down the corner 3-pointers when they're there, and again, improving himself defensively. If all those pieces can kind of function, and Brunson, again, the key piece that unlocks it all is obviously Brunson. When you have that guy, you have a chance in any playoff series. So it'll be very interesting to see just what this team's ceiling is with that kind of roster construction.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that gets kind of underrated when we think about this Knicks ceiling in the postseason, because I think the reason why some will look at this team say they're playing great, but what are they going to do when they play against these other teams that have superstar players? We kind of forget. I mean, Jalen Brunson in that first round series against the Utah Jazz led a team primarily without Luka Doncic and played like a superstar. I mean, there's actually more indication that he's going to play just as good, if not better, in the postseason than he's played in the regular season, because the best we've ever seen him play before this season was when he was leading his own team in the playoffs against another high caliber team, the Utah Jazz. So, like, I think that we say, oh, what's going to happen in the postseason? I mean, Jalen Brunson, among the top scorers in clutch points this season, one of the top scorers in fourth quarter points this season, a guy who already has playoff experience, has closed teams out in the postseason. I mean, why not? Why not Jalen Brunson being one of those guys who in the postseason is leading Knicks to 1 or 2 series wins? I think that now you have to look at the way they're playing and say, maybe this is the guy. Maybe this is the guy that can get them to maybe not the mountaintop,
Right.
but, maybe a little closer than maybe we thought coming into the season.
And closer than they have been in a really long
And
time.
a long time, exactly.
And the other thing to note is they would match up against the Cavs in the first round, who just so happened to have this guy named Donovan Mitchell, who Jalen Brunson dominated in the aforementioned first round series against the Jazz, last year. So that's and that's something else. One thing to note, just in terms of Brunson, and again, I thought that second half was interesting. The fact that if the game had been close, Jalen Brunson had a legitimate chance to make a run at 62, the scoring record in Madison Square Garden. Again, he's finished with 39 on 15 of 18 shooting, which is mind-boggling. But it's very notable, I think, that he only attempted 4 shots in the second half, which tells me a couple things. One, it was obvious that the Nets came out of halftime and said, we're probably going to lose, but we're definitely not going to lose by giving up a 60 burger to Jalen Brunson. If we have a chance of coming back, we got to cut off the head of the snake. And they started running 2 guys consistently in Brunson. What does Brunson do?
Exactly.
Unselfishly finds the open man, whether it's Randall at the nail, or Hardenstein or Mitch Rob, Grimes knocking down 3-pointers. And that's what we expect him to do, because as he said after the game, he's asked about his statistical production. He said, listen, all I care about is wins. And proof is in the pudding. Actions speak louder than words. So we know that, I think that the Jazz were probably caught off guard just by how well.
Definitely last season. Yeah.
They expect them to play well, but not that well without Luka. Now we have that series and the rest of the Mavs playoff run, and now we have 80 plus. We'll have 80 plus games of Jalen Brunson dominance in the regular season. So it'll be challenging for Brunson. But as I mentioned, that's where you come in the complementary pieces. That's when Randall can excel as a facilitator. That's when when Barrett can be a connector on the offensive end. If Grimes knocks down his threes, we know that these guys can put a defensive team at the end of the game on the floor at the end of the game for the final 8 minutes with a combination of IQ and or Grimes, Hart, Mitch Rob at the back line that are going to make it difficult to score. So, even if the teams decide to really shut down Brunson, having all these other pieces, complementary pieces that can excel in their roles, you have a very interesting, dangerous team. And listen, no team's going to say, I'm scared of the Knicks, I don't want to play the Knicks. Every team at the top of that Eastern Conference, if you give them truth serum, is going to tell you, I want no part of New York in the first round, because that's a dangerous, scary team right now.
I totally agree with that. And I think with Brunson, I think the Nets in some ways did the Knicks a favor with that second half, because I think there is a very good chance that when they get to the playoffs, you'll see teams guard Brunson the way the Nets were trying to guard Brunson. Because you can't guard him one-on-one. I mean, if you really decide you're just going to guard him one-on-one, he's going to kill you. So I think that I expect when the Knicks get to the postseason, and whoever that first round matchup is, that you'll see teams running doubles at them. And I hope that he see more doubles during these last 20 some odd games or 18 games, whatever they got left in the season, because the Knicks have to be prepared for what they're going to do when they take the ball out of Brunson's hands. Because you play basketball at the grade school level, whenever a team's got a top-notch point guard, the strategy is always cut the head of the snake. So I expect that any team that's going to play against the Knicks in the playoffs are going to try to get the ball out of Brunson's hands. He saw Mikal Bridges was picking him up full court, not letting him get the ball inbounded at certain points in that second half. And I think the Knicks being able to hold off the Nets, essentially they tied them in the second half. The Nets won the third quarter by just 1 point. Knicks won the fourth quarter by 1 point. So essentially it was a wash in a game that the Knicks were up by 24 points. So and the fact that the Knicks were able to execute still while Brunson having to get the ball off the way as much as he was, I think that was great. Kind of, almost like scout teamwork. It's crazy. I'm talking about the Nets as a scout team. That's kind of what they were in that second half. The Knicks being able to get that work and understand what their strategies are. There were so many times in that second half where I see Josh Hart pulling Hartenstein saying, hey, actually, when they do this, you got to be here. IQ was talking to someone at some point in the game, saying, hey, I think we should do this. Like, they were talking through things as they were kicking the crap out of the Brooklyn Nets. So a lot of this work that they got in this game was good. And in many ways, again, it felt like a scrimmage in that second half because they got to work on things that I think are going to be important for the playoffs.
And the other thing with Brunson, and it'll be interesting to see, maybe teams decide, hey, let JB get his, and we'll keep Randall in check. We won't let Grimes get open threes. Maybe that's the case. If Brunson has 12 assists and the Knicks win by 8 in game 1, and then game 2, that's what postseason adjustments are all about. Which is where Thibs will have to earn his money. And we'll discuss that if and when the time comes. But just in terms of the Nets game, I remember us talking on the pod previewing the first Nets, the second Nets game, the previous Nets game prior to this one was 10 days ago, whatever the case was.
Yeah, it was 13th, I think.
Yeah, it was the first game after the Nets had acquired Mikal Bridges and after the trade deadline and Hart was here. And we talked about will Mikal Bridges be able to slow down Jalen Brunson, who's been playing at an incredibly level, because we know how good of a defender Mikal Bridges is. Last 2 games against Brooklyn, Brunson has scored 79 points on 38 field goal attempts. I mean, that's, again, the guy is playing at a level at which nobody could have anticipated. It's been incredible.
And the last thing I'll say on this game is I think that we have seen an official shift in this Brooklyn Nets New York Knicks dynamic. Like I went on WFAN and said the Knicks were going to watch these guys, and they went out and watched these guys. It wasn't that surprising how much they beat them down, to be honest. Like, I think that's a Nets team that's still trying to find themselves. They have pieces that are good, maybe in a vacuum, but I don't know if necessarily fit. And I think the Knicks are going to kind of be the big dogs in this rivalry moving forward. Like, unless the Nets find a way to make a trade or do something to bring in a star and consolidate some of the pieces that they have, I think that 9-game losing streak the Knicks went on, they may be able to go on a 9-game winning streak against the Brooklyn Nets, because the last two times these two teams played, they look like they shouldn't have been on the same floor. Mitchell Robinson's on Twitter this morning saying he's the best center in New York City. I kind of thought IQ took the matchup with Cam Thomas personally, because, I mean, there were times he stripped the ball right out of his hands. It just seemed like every time Cam Thomas was on him, he was going right after him. Like, I think the Knicks see these guys on that other side and say, that's food, and they're going out there to destroy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and I think it circles the turning point when we look back, and if that's the case for the next 3 or 4 years, will be the signing of Jalen Brunson. Like I wrote about it this morning. The Knicks won 37 games last year. They were 37-45. The Knicks this morning are 37-27. So they've already matched last season's total. 8 of the 10 Knick rotation players, guys, in terms of most points scored, most minutes played from last season, returned this season. The only 2 guys that aren't there, Alec Burks and Kemba Walker, who made way for a new point guard. And that new point guard has changed this franchise immeasurably in a very short amount of time. Something for you to discuss on an overnight sometime on WFAN.
Yeah.
Is Brunson, yes, he's in the conversation for greatest. If this continues, it's early. We got plenty of time, but that's conversations are fun. At this point, he's up there with the greatest Knick free agent signings, the John Starks, the Anthony Masons, the Allen Houstons. What about in New York sports history? Where does he rank? If he goes, Reggie Jackson, Wayne Gretzky, had a big turnaround. Curtis Martin for the Jets,
right,
in the late 90s. So all these guys that just, you can pinpoint the time and place when the franchise kind of changed direction, changed trajectory, and the Knicks are on a new trajectory, and a lot of it has to do with the captain of the ship, and that's Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, definitely when it comes to free agent signings in New York sports history, I mean, he's got to be up there. I think in terms of just moves in total, he's got to be up there. I mean, I'm thinking Mark Messier,
Right. Right.
trade, Dave the Butcher, a trade. There
Yep.
are certain moves that you say, okay, there were trades that were done that, but I think, I mean, yeah, we're kind of in the middle of this. We don't know where this is going to go, but it just looks like the trajectory is extremely
Yes.
optimistic for the Knicks with Jalen Brunson at the helm. So a big win for the New York Knicks. They pound the Nets 142-118 at MSG. 7-game winning streak now for the New York Knicks. And they now, after coming off of a 3-0 homestand, it's funny, we did this podcast last Friday. We were like, hey, what are we looking here? 2-1, I guess, is probably your best case scenario. Now they're 3-0 in that homestand. Now
3
they head
blowouts.
to,
Blowout
yes,
victories.
yes, dominant performances in all three of them. They now head to South Beach to take on the Miami Heat in a crucial matchup for playoff implications. The Knicks are currently the 5th seed in the East. They sit 3.5 games ahead of the Heat, who are in 7th. This is one of the 3 matchups remaining left with the Miami Heat. They have 2 of them in South Beach. That one of them will, of course, be on Friday, and they have another one later on in the season. So big game for the Knicks in terms of the standings. The Heat are coming off a loss to the Sixers at home on Wednesday. The last time these two teams played, the Knicks beat the Heat 106-104 Madison Square Garden. That was actually probably the last great game from RJ Barry. I think he had 31 in that game or 30. So and that was a game without Jalen Brunson, I believe. So that was a big win for the Knicks at that time, as the Knicks and Heat were jockeying at that time, I think, for the 6th seed. Now things have changed greatly at this point in the season. So at this point in time, is the way the Knicks are playing. And I know, this is saying barring a kind of crazy collapse that happens down the stretch. Do you feel like the Knicks can get a win here and put them up 4.5 in the standings? Do you feel like that would kind of really put the Heat in the rearview mirror moving forward this season?
Yeah, I mean, one thing we got to keep in mind: this 7-game win streak is the second longest win streak the Knicks have had this season. They won 8 in a row
Yeah.
back in December. Then they lost 5 in a row.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't anticipate that being the case because this team is just far more well-rounded. The strength of schedule that the teams the Knicks have beat are better than the Knicks beat up on during that 8-game winning streak. This certainly feels a lot more sustainable. But that being said, the Knicks don't have the history, don't have the pedigree to look past any team. So that's why these games against the Heat are important because again, Knicks fans are going to keep their eye on that 4 seed, but they also should look in the rearview mirror that you obviously want to avoid that 7 seed, as we've talked about all year long. You want to avoid the play-in, and it looks like the Nets are obviously trending in the wrong direction. Knicks should be able to build a cushion, but they're 3.5 up on Miami right now. And you're right, if they can get 4.5 up by beating them Friday night, and they should. I mean, listen, this Heat team. Kyle Lowry did not play. They got blown out by the Sixers on Wednesday night. Kyle Lowry didn't play again due to that, that knee soreness that he's been dealing with. Bam Adebayo is really the only player producing on a consistent level. Jimmy Butler was, 16, 3 and 3. He's going to play well, but certainly not. At this stage of his career, probably not capable of dominating for long stretches. Gabe Vincent starting at point guard. Tyler Hero was 4 of 15 from the floor. Kevin Love is starting and playing 25 minutes a night for Miami. A guy that couldn't even was out of the rotation because he was a liability defensively for Cleveland for the last month. They don't have a ton coming off the bench. Caleb Martin obviously is a talented player, and Max Strus as well, but Cody Zeller, Duncan Robinson is kind of trying to get back in the rotation. In terms of talent, from top to bottom, not only, Brunson and Randall at top, but again, the thing we've talked about, previously on this pod and previous pods is that 3rd through 9 player in the rotation, the Hart, the IQ, the Hartenstein, the Mitch Rob, and then Jalen Brunson kind of being the wild card. That's where the Knicks kind of can differentiate themselves on a night in, night out basis. And that's where they should be able to take advantage of a humbled and hurting Miami Heat team.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they win this game, the Heat are cooked in terms of trying to catch the Knicks. Now Brooklyn is still in the picture. Now they'd have to really turn around how they're playing. But they're close up in the standings where you can't dismiss Brooklyn. But if they get a 4.5 against the Heat, that's a lot. And then the Heat would then have to sweep the Knicks in the last 2 games. The way Knicks are playing, do I think the Heat can beat the Knicks 3 straight times, essentially? That would surprise me.
Right. That's the only thing to mention as far as those two teams head to head is even if the Knicks win Friday and have a huge 4.5 game lead with 16 or so games, that he do play them twice. So theoretically,
Yeah.
Knicks stumble, and he would obviously have to win those 2 games. It's not inconceivable that they would make the run, but certainly the Knicks would have a huge, seemingly insurmountable lead if they take care of business Friday night.
Yeah. And I think when you look at the standings, because the Nets are, entirely different team than they were 2 weeks ago, the Heat are the team you look at and say, okay, we know their pedigree, we know the caliber of players they have. They're the team you kind of worry about, say, okay, maybe they'll catch them, they can get hot. The Heat, they've shown in history that they can go on a 9 out of 10 game stretch or win 12 out of 13. So that's the team that you worry about. But 4.5 with the way this Heat team is playing, they're an older team, they're a little bit beat up. I just think that would be too much to overcome. So this is a big opportunity for the Knicks. You mentioned Kyle Lowry. When he's played, he's been ineffective, and now he's even not playing. So maybe that's a addition by subtraction. I'm not sure. They started Gabe Vincent the last game. He went 0 for 7 from 3. So I'm not sure how much of an upgrade that's going to be. So the Heat are in a little bit of trouble. And, there's the rumblings about, how happy is Jimmy Butler with the situation right now. We know Bam Adebayo. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the NBA. I mean, that last game against the Knicks, I mean, he looked like a superstar in that game. He was phenomenal. And he's a great player, great two-way player. It just doesn't feel like they have a lot around him. And they, like you mentioned, the bench, they do not have a lot coming off the bench. So it almost feels like the Heat at this point are kind of playing out the string. And then they'll just kind of see what happens when they get to the postseason, whether it's a play-in matchup or they find a way to get to that 6th spot and catch the Nets. But I don't know. I think that the Knicks, this is a game you said. There's 7 in a row. So at a certain point, they're not going to win, 30 in a row, whatever games left. So the Knicks are going to lose at some point. So if they lost, I mean, it's going to happen at some point. But it feels like on paper, the Knicks should beat this team. It feels like they should beat this team. They're deeper, they're younger, they're fresher. And I would argue if they don't got the best player on the floor, they got 2 of the 3 best players on the floor in Randle and Brunson.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as I mentioned, the Heat started Kevin Love at power forward last night. I mean,
Jesus.
You can't ask Kevin Love to guard Julius Randle. I mean, that's an embarrassment. They'll probably put Caleb Martin.
I guess he's on Mitch, right? I guess he'll start on Mitch. But I mean,
put Bam on Randle. You thinking?
Yeah.
It's a possibility. I don't know if you want Bam, guarding. I could see Randle putting up 10 3-pointers if just drawing Bam, way outside the floor. That's a great matchup defensively for Mitch, though, who's been playing at a really high level. He'll get he'll have a tough test against Bam Adebayo. And the other at point guard. So you got Jalen Brunson against Gabe Vincent is a mismatch as well. And then you got the bench unit with Hart and IQ, as we mentioned. So yeah, on paper, Knicks have there's a big talent discrepancy, and the things you hate about Thibs leaving Brunson and Randle in the game up 40 points with 3 minutes left until last night. The good comes with that bad comes with the good. He keeps this team hungry. They don't take a second off. So they're not going to overlook any opponent. I thought Wednesday night might have been a trap game, coming off a huge win over the Celtics. The Nets are going to get up for the game. How do teams deal with success? And the Knicks more than showed up. Jock Vaughn talked about that, getting off to a strong start, and it was the Knicks led by Randle and Brunson who really just buried the Brooklyn right out of the gate.
Yeah, Knicks are starting to show the signs of being a mature team. Like, I know they have a lot of young players, but it feels like, like you said, pretty much since the turn of the calendar year, these like absolute stinkers, like they haven't had a lot of them. Like they may have a bad quarter, they may have a bad half, like they had against the Washington game. It was like a bad quarter. They may have a bad quarter, maybe they'll have a bad half, but it's rare that they'll just not show up for an entire game. And I do think that, I have given Thibs a lot of crap on this podcast, and I will give him crap when I think that he deserves it. But he is doing a tremendous job keeping this team prepared, keeping this team focused. And he just seems to have the right temperature of the squad, something that I don't think he had last season, but he definitely has right now.
Yeah, and just one thing about Thibs, and I almost have to laugh when folks on media, a lot of media members especially, say, "Oh, where are the Thibs haters now? You guys are silent." Or no, I don't think it's as much of an own as these guys think. The reason the season the Knicks were 10-13 with this essentially the same level. They were 3 games below 500 because he was playing Fournier, because he was playing playing IQ 22 minutes a night because he was playing Derrick Rose extended minutes when it's clear Derrick Rose is a shell of himself. What did he do? He did what the Thibs haters wanted him to do: play IQ a ton more minutes, give McBride have him replace the rotation that the minutes Fournier was getting to improve the team defensively. What do you know?
Quinn Grimes,
and Quinn Grimes, give him a ton more minutes. What do you know? The Knicks turn it around, and again, Thibs deserves credit. Where credit is due. But the beauty of claiming that Thibs haters are blind is okay. So if Thibs gets credit for their record this year, does he get blamed? Is he the one to blame for essentially, for them having a terrible season last year? So I keep that in mind when you see folks say, "Oh, listen," and I've said from the start, the NBA is about talent. You can't, you don't want to put too much emphasis on coaching. That changes a little bit in the postseason when you have to make adjustments. Thibs was badly outcoached in the Atlanta series. He'll get a chance at redemption this year. We'll see how it goes. But again, and we've been sincere since day one. We've knocked Thibs when he deserves it, and you give him credit when he deserves it. You knock Randall when he's playing poorly and quitting on his team and showing zero effort defensively. Then you credit him when he fights through screens and does the little extra things here and there and passes the ball at it and stops doing the turnaround in the middle lane where he gets stripped and turns the ball over. We do this weird thing where we give players credit and coaches credit when they deserve it. So if you enter it without a significant bias, and looking and coming to an endpoint and then finding reasons for it, if you just you make your analysis and comment on the games after they happen, you leave yourself a lot of opportunity to again be fair, and that includes knocking guys when they don't play well, as we've done with Barrett, and crediting guys like Brunson when they turn around an entire franchise.
Yeah, I mean, the Thibs stuff is funny when people are like, where are the Thibs haters? Like you said, Thibs made adjustments that I could have made if I was in the bench. In fact, there are adjustments I kept asking for when I was talking on the podcast or talking on radio in New York City, that these are the things they need to do to change the program, change the team around, and lo and behold, that happens. Okay, credit for doing that, but that doesn't negate what we were saying before was true. And what I always find funny, because you always mention like how like every time the Knicks go on some winning streak, that article of where the Thibs haters is never late. It's always coming.
Never.
But you know what article never gets written? Where's the love for Leon Rose?
Yep.
Like every time there's a win streak that happens, it's always, it's Thibs. You got to give Thibs all the credit. Where the people, but those same media members who want to give Leon Rose crap for not talking to them, for being basically on the back of a milk carton because you can't find them, they will hammer him. They will make every single move he makes or move he doesn't make and talk about how he's failing the team. But then when they start winning, it's Thibs. It's got to be Thibs. It's not Leon Rose. It's not Leon Rose, the guy who brought in Jalen Brunson, the guy who traded for Josh Hart and led this 7-0 stretch to Josh Hart joining the team. It can't be that. It's got to be all Thibs.
Perfect point is the Josh Hart. It's not even Leon Rose got the guy. Thibs got his guy in Josh Hart, so he gets credit for it. Thibs got his guy in Jalen Brunson, as if he's the one on the working the phones and trying to figure out the cap and figure out how to get a trade done. It's just,
I've unfortunately seen Thibs run an NBA team. It didn't go very well. Exactly. I saw him run the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Into the ground.
So it sounds like every time when we talk about the guys Thibs wants, it sounds like the front office most of the time ignores them. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever. The only guy that gave him was Derrick Rose. All these other guys he's been asked for. He wanted Reggie Bullock back. They were like, "Get out of here, old man."
Like Alex Burks back.
Yeah, when Alex Burks back, get out of here, man. So exactly, it's we give credit where credit is due. Thibs is doing a very good job. He has his strengths. I think you're seeing his strengths accentuated with this squad.
Definitely.
The weaknesses that he has, I think, could show up in the postseason with adjustments that have to be made quickly. He's made adjustments much quicker this season than he has in the past, and that's why the Knicks have this record. Let's hope that he makes those same adjustments when it's playoff time. Last thing on the Heat real quick. I love the Miami Heat matchup. For a lot of older fans, like they think about the Knicks-Bulls rivalry, Knicks-Pacers rivalry, and to some degree, I got a little bit of Knicks-Pacers rivalry in the late 2000s. But like the Heat rivalry is like the rivalry for me. Like whenever I think of teams I hate in the NBA as a Knicks fan, the Miami Heat always go right up to the top of the list because of those matchups in 97, 98, 99, and 2000. Incredible that they played that many times in a row with the Pat Riley going from New York and then going to Miami kind of in the wind of the night to run that organization. Any favorite moments in the Miami Heat Knicks rivalry?
Yeah, for me, it's an easy one. It's Allen Houston's shot. In '99 Game 5. The backstory for me was I was a sophomore in college, I think that year. And I went to Holy Cross up in Massachusetts, and at the end of the year, a bunch of students would get together and rent out a couple hotel rooms or whatever apartments down on the Cape, on the Atlantic Ocean side of Massachusetts. I didn't go. I missed like the first couple days of that because I wanted to make sure that I was at home watching that, and I still was on the fence, like, should I go? And anyway, long story short, Knicks playing the Heat that day, Game 5. Allen Houston's hits that shot. I'm in my basement with my cousin. And we go crazy, and I go, yo, let's leave right now. We get in the car, drive out to the Cape, amped up, watch the Hawk series. I ended up getting thrown out of the hotel because I was running around like the parking lot after a can be dunk against Atlanta in Game 2, and the owner of the hotel throws me out. My friends still joke with me about this. He throws me out of that. He says, "Yo, you can't stay here. You got to go." And I just looked at the guy. I go, "Must be a Hawks fan." So that's my little story from that run in '99, and that's why that moment. And Patrick, people forget how Patrick playing with the heart of a warrior on a bum Achilles.
Absolutely.
That series always was, I think, kind of his last great moments as a Knick.
Yeah, Ewing was an absolute warrior in that series. It's funny, I was looking back at that play. A play, by the way, the shot from Houston is hanging up in my apartment. It's one of the few sports pictures I have hanging up in my apartment. Houston. It's a beautiful shot from behind the baseline of him shooting and seeing the Heat crowds kind of like, oh no. It's definitely one of my favorite moments as a sports fan. I mean, I remember being a kid in Queens, and it's funny. My dad's a huge Knicks fan, but he wasn't home. I think he was working. So I like, and this is like, maybe I don't know if my dad had a cell phone at this point, or if he did, it was not something he would use to like call to talk about, hey, the Knicks won. But like, I remember like Houston hitting that shot, and it's just like my mom and my brothers, and like I'm just running around the apartment going crazy. The Knicks are gonna win this series. I just remember being like, I cannot wait to tell my dad what I just saw, because I know my dad, he might have been listening on the radio, but he might not have seen it. So I'm like, he's not gonna believe how the Knicks won this game. So like, thinking about that and thinking about like that moment, always high on the list when it comes to sports memories. I also, you can't also forget about Jeff and Gundy hanging on the leg of Alonzo Mourning, as him and LJ are just throwing haymakers at each other. I mean, that was a different time in the NBA. It's crazy to think of how things are now and think of how things were in that series. I mean, there were fights breaking out. It seemed like every game. It was crazy.
Two really quick things on the Houston shot. 1.8 seconds left when the Knicks inbounded. One of the great what ifs. If they had a replay, I think that ball goes off Sprewell's foot, by the way.
Oh yeah.
The play right before, like if you slow it down, then they would have, that shot. Obviously, they don't even get the chance to inbound. I think Marley fouled Houston on the shot, hit him on the top of the head. But the other thing is 0.8 seconds left after the shot drops. Van Gundy screaming at the official for allowing Terry Porter to get a shot off. He took a dribble and then launched one from like 35 feet. Didn't go in, obviously, but I actually had an opportunity to talk to Van Gundy last year, and I asked him, like, why were you screaming at the official? He said, because Terry Porter should not have. Again, remember, they didn't have replay at that point either. So if that shot goes in, the ref had his arms up, and it bent off then it would have counted. They couldn't have overturned it with replay. So I said, but you just won the first 8 seed to beat a 1 seed, and you're screaming at the official. He goes, yeah, because we almost lost on some BS, So that was a great series, a great moment in Knicks history.
And one thing I'll mention also as well as we move on, like I also forgot, because I watched that whole series, that last minute of that game, like yesterday, a couple days. I don't know why it was up on Twitter, and I forgot how terrible that offensive series was before Sprewell gets the ball knocked out of bounds. Like, they had nothing cooking. I don't know what Jeff was doing on that draw to start, because there was nothing happening, and they got lucky that they got that side out of bounds.
And not just that series, not just that quarter, those games, those Pacers games. For anyone that complains, the NBA, there's too many 3-pointers, it's boring. Go watch. Treat yourself to like one of those 7-game series against the Pacers, or those knockdown drag out fights when they would dump the ball into Ewing. And I love Patrick, yada yada yada. But and
Yeah.
then one guy would stand on one side of the floor, the other 4 guys would watch. Just watch that, and then compare that with, contrast it with the movement and effort and energy teams play with today.
Yeah, Knicks got very lucky in that one, but we're happy that they are. Knicks Heat, big game Friday, always a fun one when the Knicks and Heat match up. I want to end this show here talking about some important news for Knicks fans. So, Knicks fans fleeing cable subscriptions will now have a new option to watch the team. Madison Square Garden announced it is launching a streaming service that will stream live Knicks, Rangers, Islanders, and Buffalo Sabres games on this new streaming service. It is MSG Plus. Which will come with a price tag of $29.99 per month or $399.99 annually. Fans will also have the option to buy individual games for $9.99 per game. MSG Plus will only be available in regions that carry MSG Network on cable TV. So important to note for those who may be not from New York. Traditional TV subscribers will also get access to MSG Plus free. So if you do have a cable subscription, then you'll have MSG Plus. So you'll be able to stream wherever you go, and all the extra features that come with MSG Plus will be added. What do you think of this new streaming service? I mean, I'll be honest, like I saw that price tag and I said, I thought that was a little much. I thought that, I understand that, Dolan's got to get the money. He's got to recoup the benefits, I guess. But I mean, $29.99 a month. Like, if you're only a fan of the Knicks or you're only a fan of the Rangers, like, I don't know how that's worth the price.
It's not. Dolan, interestingly, the MSG Sphere is a building that they're building in Vegas.
Yeah.
It is supposed to be finished last year. Classic. Supposed to be finished 6 months ago. Supposed to be finished 18 months ago, and now here we are. They're still trying to finish it. Sounds like it's been a money hole. Sounds like it's cost Dolan a lot more money than he thought, and obviously has no profits to show for it. That being said, we're not going to start a GoFundMe for James Dolan and the Dolan family anytime soon. They have plenty of money, so I think overcharging fans for the reality is, fans, if you're listening to this podcast on a Thursday afternoon with everything else going on in the world, you're a diehard fan. If you're reading about the Knicks, or you're reading about the Rangers or the Islanders or whatever the case might be, if you're dedicating a certain segment, the owners of these teams and these regional sports networks understand that there's almost no price that is too high for a person that is a diehard fan of a team. So they're going to milk those fans for all they're worth, unfortunately, as they do with ticket prices and the cost of a beer and pretzel at a game, etc. That being said, I think this is the preview of the future. At some point, every game that you watch is good. You're going to have to buy it either a la carte or, not just NFL, but we're moving in that direction for NBA and MLB games as people continue to cut the cord. Then at this, because I have not cut the cord yet, I still have a Verizon Fios. I got the cable package, and the primary reason is because of MSG. So this is not going to impact me directly. And I think, I think folks went a little bit too far, assuming that they could charge these exorbitant prices and folks were going to cut the cord. But eventually, at a certain price point, and no longer the reason to cut the cord was, even though you have a slightly fewer options, you have just what you want, and it's a lot cheaper. Now it's not as much, not as cheap, as much cheaper, if at all less expensive. So I think that's what these MSG and the Yes Networks, and we've talked about the regional sports networks. They're falling apart in hard times as well. It'll be very interesting to see how this all shakes out.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, the price tag, because again, we think about Knicks fans, and I'm sure you have people who can't afford this, but there are going to be some Knicks fans that they may spend it, but they might not actually be able to afford something like this on a yearly basis or a monthly basis. And when you think of I don't know, I feel like sports teams, certain things I just feel like should be, I don't want to say like a birthright, but just like, I don't know, like you should be able to watch your sports team in your local town. Like that shouldn't
100%.
be something that you get priced out of or have to pay for. Like maybe you can't go to the game, but you should be able to at least watch them on television. And the idea that this is becoming something that is becoming for rich folks essentially is kind of getting a little ridiculous. So it's unfortunate that so many Knicks fans who had talked about, and all the teams, Islanders fans, Rangers fans, etc., have talked about, hey, there really should be an option for us to watch these teams if you don't have cable. It's unfortunate that it seems like the Garden's kind of taking advantage of that. So to say, okay, yeah, that's a great idea. Here's a stick up. $300 for a year if you want to do this. It's like, come
totally,
on, man.
and I agree with you, EJ, that that sports teams are essentially a public trust in a lot of respects.
Right.
And the other thing, another reason, we've just spent the first half an hour talking about the Knicks and Nets and the non-rivalry, because the reason was, even when the Nets had KD and Kyrie, there was just such a foundation of Knicks love in the city, in the state, among basketball fans in New York, that it wasn't going to get replaced in 4 years, 10 years, a couple championships that were purchased by mercenaries. It could, because of that foundation. Now, that's why I think charging exorbitant prices, while you may get a short-term profit, it's penny wise, pound foolish. Because if now you have fans that can't afford to watch Knicks, you're going to see the anticipation, the interaction, and the fan base start to deteriorate a little bit. When you price folks out of the building, that's one thing. But when you price folks out of being able to watch the game, period, that's when things really could start to turn, and you start to alienate, part of that key, that key dynamic of the fan base, that could really be detrimental long term, to where the Knicks are going forward.
And the NBA's got to be careful, because I want to shout out Bomani Jones. I thought he had a really good thing on Overtime Elite on his show on HBO. And it's essentially Overtime Elite banking. Overtime as a company banking on that they know how basketball is being consumed now by the younger generation. And what a lot of the NBA is learning right now is that teams that Gen Zers are not necessarily watching live games. Like, they're consuming basketball through Instagram reels, through TikToks, through Twitter videos, through short clips. As you mentioned, it's why someone like Lonzo Ball has more followers on IG than Giannis Antetokounmpo. So this is kind of a dangerous game here. Like, you're banking, maybe for the short term, in the next 10, 15 years, you'll still get people who will pay this $300 a month to watch the Knicks. But they're going to be a new generation of fans who will be, of the ilk to kind of run their family household and kind of run how they consume sports. And if that future means not watching full games, I don't know how many people are paying for this. The NBA is already dealing with an issue with younger fans not consuming live games completely. I think that it's a risk to think that as you move forward, this is something that's going to be a viable business model 15, 20 years from now. I think that I don't think it will be, quite frankly.
100%. And I'm sure that there were people in executive C-suites at NBA league offices that convinced Adam Silver, look at how many more followers we have on Twitter, on Facebook, on TikTok than all the other leagues combined. And this will guarantee that we've consolidated the younger generation, and our ratings are going to skyrocket, when actually the opposite has happened, or they plateaued at best, because that younger generation, partly because of because they've embraced the league on social media, they've avoided watching full games. They just, whether it's decreased attention span or the million other things that are all factored into this, you're 100% right. They consume the sport and games and the league different than teams in the past.
Yeah, MSG Plus set to launch in the summer. Interesting time to launch, considering none of these teams played in the summer. But that is when maybe it'll give them time to kind of work out any kinks that they have before the hockey and NBA season starts. But it does come with a $29.99 per month price tag, $399.99 annually. So if you're interested in that it will be an option to watch games. You'd also buy individual games, $9.99 per month for you Knicks fans. But that'll do it for this edition of Orange and Blue Bloods. Tommy, let people know where they can find you.
At Tommy Beer on Twitter, and subscribe to the What's on Tap newsletter if you get a chance.
There you go. And you can follow me, EJ_Stewart on Twitter, Action EJ on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for checking out this edition of Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast, a WFAN Audacy original. You can get all these episodes wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. On your download streaming service, make sure you hit the auto download feature so you can get these episodes whenever we drop. We drop 3 times a week, so we'll be back next week with more episodes of Orange and Blue Bloods. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube. We are on the Audacy Sports channel on YouTube, where you can catch not just the full episode here of Orange and Blue Bloods, but also the individual segments we do on the show are also posted on YouTube. So that'll do it for now. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. Have a good weekend. For Tommy, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.